Okay, so on this warm-up, this is one of the times where we have to use our answer to solve further steps in our problem, right? So we're going to find BD, and then we're going to use BD, which happens to be the altitude, to solve for some other missing sides. Please, when you are reusing an answer, do not round as you go. Do not round BD to the nearest hundredth. Yes, so that is a skill that you need to have. You need to be able to look at all the different parts of the triangle. And in this case, we have 3 right triangles. So there's 3 different places that we could use trig. But no, that's a way better suggestion to use triangle ABC. Instead of finding the altitude, we can find x right away. And then we can use x to find y. Either way, you're going to be using one of your answers to find another one. But finding x would be the best one to do first. Thank you for that suggestion, B. So if we're going to find x first, we have adjacent and opposite. So we would say tan of 34 equals opposite over adjacent. Denominator divide, 28 divided by tan 34. Now, when you write your answer, you're going to round it to the nearest hundredth. But you're not going to use that rounded answer to find y. You're going to use the whole answer in your calculator to find y. 28 divided by tan 34. What do we get? Write it out. Write it in the chat. What did you get for x? There we go. 41.51. And some of us are still working on rounding, but a lot of you have it mastered. 41.51. Okay, so you're going to keep that number in your calculator. And you're going to use it to find y. Let's see. Now we have adjacent. Now be careful, because when we're finding y, we are not looking at triangle ABC anymore. We're looking at triangle ADB. And so now this is the hypotenuse, and this is adjacent. So to find y, we're going to use cosine. And we have adjacent over hypotenuse. We're looking for y. Y is in the numerator, so we're going to multiply. So we keep that number that was hanging out in our calculator, and we just press times cosine 34. So that way we use the whole number, the exact number. And we get y is 34.41. Would we have gotten the same thing if we used the rounded number? So if we were rounding to the nearest thousandth, we would have been in trouble, but we were rounding to the nearest hundredth, so we would have gotten the same answer either way. Okay. Here are the answers to your second trig homework. It was called Trigonometric Ratios number 2. The more you practice these, the better you're going to get at it. Yeah, you're very good at trigonometry. Good job, Taher. And if you're not getting it, then you need to watch the original lesson one more time. Watch it really slow when I'm describing how to set it up, how to identify opposite and adjacent, and press pause, and then write out the equation really slow. Memorize how to spell SOHCAHTOA. Number 13. You're looking for the missing angles. X and Y are angles, so we know we're going to use an inverse function. Say sine of x equals opposite over hypotenuse. How do you solve for x? How do you undo sine? Well, you do inverse sine. Well, inverse sine of 11 over 20, and that equals x. And then because it's an angle, we're going to round to the nearest whole number. So if we do inverse sine, 11 divided by 20, we get 33 degrees. And then once we know one of these angles, once we know one of them, we automatically know the other angle because you just subtract from 90. Okay? So our other one would be 57. Lesson. Okay, on number 16, you can use either angle that you want. You just pick an angle and you can ignore the other angle there. So compared to 23, it doesn't matter which one we look for first. We can look for x first or y first. Sometimes it confuses people when there's too much information, so just hide some of the information for a while. X is in the numerator, so we're going to multiply. And then it's your choice. That'll be x. It's your choice once you have x, how you want to find y. You can totally just use Pythagorean theorem to find y. Since you have two sides of a triangle, you don't need to use trig again. So that's up to you whether you do sine of 23 to find y or whether you use Pythagorean theorem to find y. Well, Tahir, the 67, it wasn't useless, but you only need one angle to do trig. You don't need two angles. So just pick either angle. You could have used the 67 or the 23. You know, guys, I mean, when you have a triangle, you can always find the missing angle. You just don't need it. You only need one angle, one of the acute angles in a right triangle to do trig. Is there a page 2? Yeah, here's page 2 of the answers. So I was asked about 23, but we went over that in a lot of the classes yesterday. Let's see. 23 is, remember how we talked about yesterday how you can do trig without a calculator if you have a special right triangle. You can't find the sine of 21 degrees without a calculator, but you can find the sine of 30 degrees without a calculator. And the way that you do that is you draw a 30, 60, 90 triangle to help you out. And then you can put x root 3, 2x, or you can put 1 root 3, 2 times 1. You can put numbers there instead of x's. That way you have less work to do when you're cleaning it up. So what would the sine of 30 be? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite over hypotenuse. So the sine of 30 is 1/2. The cosine of 30, adjacent over hypotenuse. The tangent of 30, opposite over adjacent, but then you rationalize the denominator. Okay? So that's how you do trig by hand, but you can only do it when it's a special right triangle. If it's a special right triangle, you really wouldn't use trig. You would use your rules. Okay? Today's short lesson is called Angles of Elevation and Depression. It's pretty much, that's a fancy way of saying we're going to take trig, and now we're actually going to put it in the context of the real world. Because why would we spend time doing all of this if no one's ever going to use it in application form? So that's what today is. Today is applications. All right, so let's start with angle of elevation. We call this the looking up part. If someone is in the boat, so we have a person in the boat, and they're looking up to the top of the lighthouse. Sometimes we call this their line of sight. If they are looking up to the top of the lighthouse, then the angle of elevation is the angle formed by their line of sight and a horizontal line. This is our horizontal line right here. This is a right angle because hopefully it's not a leaning lighthouse. So the angle of elevation is going to be this angle right here. I'm going to put an E for elevation. That is the angle of elevation. It's when you're on the ground and you're looking up. It's the angle formed with the horizontal. So you have your horizontal and then you're looking up, and that's the angle of elevation. It can be narrow, or it can be large or small. Angle of elevation is when you're on the ground, you're looking up. Think elevated. You're up, looking up. Elevation. The angle of depression is when you are looking down. So now the reference point, the person we're referencing, is not the person on the boat. Now it's the person in the lighthouse. The person in the lighthouse spots a boat. This is his line of sight to the boat. Now, be so careful because this is what students get confused about. The angle of depression is the angle formed by the line of sight and a horizontal line. So you would need to draw in a horizontal line like this, see? So this angle right here is actually the angle of depression. It's the angle formed by the line of sight and a horizontal. Horizon is flat, okay? This right here is not the angle of depression. You see that angle? A lot of people accidentally put it there, but it's not the one formed with the vertical, it's the one formed with the horizontal. Okay? So now you have in your notes what angle of elevation looks like and what angle of depression looks like. Think of depression, you're looking down, you're sad, you're depressed. And so the angle of depression is when you're up high looking down, formed with the horizontal. Okay? Now, what do you think is true about the angle of elevation and the angle of depression? If I put the angle of elevation back in here, what do you know? What's the vocab word for the angle of elevation and the angle of depression? Congruent is true, but it's not the vocab word. Oh, you got it, Chloe. They are alternate interior angles. They are alternate interior angles. Oh. And so the angle of elevation is always congruent to the angle of depression. That's awesome, because we don't have to keep track of, oh, this angle is 53 and then the other angle is 57. No, they are the same angle all the time, every time. The angle of depression is congruent to the angle of elevation. And the reason why is because they are alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles. It makes the letter Z, and so they're alternate interior angles. Okay, let's do some word problems before we take our quiz. Draw a picture, please. A tree casts a shadow 21 meters long. The angle of elevation of the sun is 51 degrees. What is the height of the tree? Draw a picture before I show you the right picture. Label everything. This is a skill we should all have. We should be able to turn a word problem into a picture without being given a picture. Meters, not miles. Does the static go away when I do that? Is the static on? This is what it should look like. We have our tree. We have our shadow. Shadows are on the ground. So we don't put any shadows. They can't float in the air. They fall on the ground. The angle of elevation of the sun, we know where that goes now because we learned where angle of elevation is. And we want to find the height of the tree. So X goes here. Setting up your picture is one of the toughest parts because now you know how to do trig. So if you've set up your picture correctly, from here it should be very easy. What would this one be? Tan, opposite over adjacent, 21 times tan 51. So today I'm not focusing on the trig, I'm focusing on drawing the pictures and labeling them correctly. So if I go quickly through the trig, I apologize. We're going to round it to, let's round it to the nearest 100. So the tree would be 25.93 meters tall. Remember when we do word problems, we include units if necessary. Next one. Draw a picture, please. A 15-meter pole is leaning against a wall. The foot of the pole is 10 meters from the wall. Find the angle the pole makes with the ground. No, we have this one and one more, okay? So hopefully you drew a picture. You didn't have to draw a brick wall like mine. But a 15-meter pole. The pole is 15 meters, so I hope you labeled the hypotenuse. The foot of the pole is 10 meters from the wall. When you hear the foot of something, or the base of something, that's always going to be on the ground. It's going to be the bottom, okay? Find the angle the pole makes with the ground. Here's the ground. Here's the pole. So the angle that it makes is right there. It doesn't matter if it was backwards. So this would be cosine, right? Cosine of x equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And then we do our cool little inverse. Second cosine, 10 divided by 15. And it looks like it's a 48-degree angle. Good job, whoever typed it already. Okay, we only have time for one more, so let me make sure it's a good one. This one. Nope, sorry. I'm waiting for a good one. Yeah, we need this one. I need to do a K-level one with you before you take your quiz. Okay, please draw this. An observer from a hot air balloon 80 feet above the ground sees two cars approaching. The angles of depression are 40 and 28. What is the distance between the cars? All right, for time's sake, I am going to go ahead and reveal the picture and talk about how to do this one, okay? You needed to draw a hot air balloon. How high in the air is it? It is 80 feet. Two cars are approaching. So he sees two cars approaching. So line of sight and line of sight. Now the angles of depression are 40 and 28. Now we know that the angle of depression is congruent to the angle of elevation. So in this picture, I'm actually just going to put these numbers in the angle of elevation's spot. You are allowed to do that and encouraged to do that sometimes, okay? So where do I put the 40 and where do I put the 28? Which angle's larger? This one will be the larger angle because he's closer to the hot air balloon. This one will be the smaller angle. The farther away you get from something, the smaller the angle is of the line of sight with the ground, okay? What is the distance between the cars? Whoa. So this is what we're looking for. That's X. You can't find X with one trig problem. You just can't. So what I recommend you do is you're going to have to find A, and you're going to have to find B. Using trig, you'll find A. Using trig, you'll find B. And then you'll just subtract them, and you'll know what X is. Okay? What are you going to use each time? Let's see, compared to that angle, we have opposite and we have adjacent. Okay, so the tan of 28 equals opposite over A, and then the tan of 40 equals opposite over, with the 40, we're going to be finding B. So you do have to see which side each angle goes with. 28 is the big triangle, so 28 helps you find A, and 40 is that smaller triangle, so 40 helps you find B. Yes, go ahead and start the quiz. Go ahead. I'll keep working this one, but y'all start the quiz. Okay, so to continue this, our variable is in the denominator both times, so we will divide both times. 80 divided by tan 28. And we get, this is not a final answer, so I'm not going to round it yet. And then we have 80 divided by tan 40. Also not a final answer. We don't round until the end. Let's see. We'll just do that. Okay. So now we just subtract them. 4, 5, 8, 1. Okay. What is the distance between the cars? If we rounded to the nearest hundredth, let's say, then the distance would be 55.12 feet between the two cars. So that one was a multi-step problem because we had two right triangles going on there. Your homework is the trig applications. You're only doing page 1 tonight, and then you can do page 2 tomorrow night. So you do not need to do all of them tonight. Just page 1 tonight, page 2 tomorrow. You do need to try these because these are word problems and you need to practice drawing the pictures.